Hi, Heather.
Hello.
We ready?
Let's do it.
This is the final installation of our LSD series.
It's been a nice trip.
Wow. You know when something's so good, it makes you kind of mad?
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like cute aggression. It's like, that was just so satisfying.
I'm going to choose
Wow.
that prompt on my next dating profile. How my friends would describe me. So good, it's annoying.
So good, it makes me angry.
Yep.
Okay. So, Heather,
Mm,
it's Friday night in Detroit, 1968.
okay. It is a Friday night right now,
It
so
is a Friday night as
I'm
we're
there.
recording. So we'll just knock it back a few years.
Mm-hmm.
The Grand Ballroom smells like sweat, cigarettes, and something else.
No, okay.
That little chemical we've been talking about recently.
Okay. That's better than what I was wondering.
Yeah,
Good, good.
yeah. I'm sure there was some BO tied in there too, but we're talking about LSD.
Okay.
That sweet chemical smell that nobody really ever talked about. They just did it.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
don't think I really knew it had a smell,
Yeah,
but it makes
apparently it
sense.
does.
Okay. All
Sweet
right.
and chemically. I don't know. Those of you listening who've been on trips, let us know what
Yeah,
your
let us know what
LSD
it smells
smells
like.
like. Yeah.
Hmm.
The crowd is maybe 1,000 people. They're all pressed together in the dark.
Oh,
They
my nightmare.
come. I know. This is an immersive experience, obviously.
Yeah, okay.
However, it does feel like it could be, I don't know, maybe a little overstimmy for some
Uh-huh.
people.
It's me. Yeah.
It's me. I'm the people.
Yeah.
The crowd is made up of many different types of people. There's
Mhm.
multicultural aspects, there's multi-ethnic, there are people who are from the blue collar world of Detroit. But the Grand is where all those categories really blur. There's factory workers, kids, and army surplus jackets. They couldn't get into college, but they have a draft notice sitting at their desk at home.
Yep.
There are Wayne State University students with paperbacks in their back pockets, still buzzing from political meetings that
Mhm.
ran for several hours. There are Black kids, there are white kids, all standing next to each other close. And they probably would have been in a fight maybe a year ago or two in the
Mhm.
streets before all the riots reshuffled everything. So nobody at the Grand is going to Woodstock. That's not the vibe.
Okay.
Woodstock is for the California dreamers, the ones who think that love is enough, the hippies, the
Yeah.
free love, the flower children. This is not that.
Okay.
The MC5 made music for the hippies who were not willing to be walked over, which is hippiedom at its finest, some people would argue.
Yeah, for sure.
The people at the Grand know the difference. They live near what's considered the 12th Street corridor, and they watch the events of 67 happen from their windows and their rooftops. The acid is moving through the room. John Sinclair, who we talked about last
Yeah.
episode, who is the another significant person we will be bringing up throughout today. If you want to know more about him other than what we're speaking about today, him and the White Panther Party will be brought up throughout this because they are deeply connected. But you can find out more about him in the White Panther Party episode. He referred to his people as acid freaks. But
Love that.
tell me how you think freaks was spelled.
Freex.
Okay,
Really?
you
I'm
got a
right?
half
Oh,
KS.
darn it.
Freeks,
EEKS.
as in
Okay.
free, right?
Oh, copy
Because they're
that.
free.
Okay.
So for them, like we talked about in the White Panther Party episode, that their relationship to LSD wasn't recreational. This is
Right.
not, for John Sinclair specifically. It was an ideology for him, and it was the tool that was made to dismantle the straight world's grip on
Yeah.
your mind in the way that we think things should be, and this
Mhm.
propaganda that so many young people were pumped full of. Imagine it that a girl in the back is on her first acid trip ever,
With
and
all
she's
these people. Oh my
holding with all
God.
these people. Can you imagine?
No.
She's holding the hand of someone she barely knows,
Mhm.
and another guy in the third row hasn't slept for 2 days.
Yeah. Okay.
So the band that we're going to be talking about today, as you can see in the title, as you clicked on this, I'm sure, is called MC5.
Mhm.
They play almost every night, and they are the house band at the Grand Ballroom.
Wow. Okay.
The fans who come back again and again describe what happens to them afterwards is like a delirious exhaustion from a street rumble or an orgy.
Okay. Was this because
So
they're the house band, this is
orgasmic,
just like
euphoric.
were you just, like, coming in and you just got to enjoy it? You don't have to, like, pay for
Yes.
it? Okay.
I actually, that's a really great
Or
question.
maybe there was just, like, a cover charge to come
I
in.
bet you there was a cover charge of some kind because they had the agreement from what I read between the person who opened the Grand Ballroom. They couldn't even pay the band until the Grand Ballroom got oriented and more popular and they had people coming in. And he seemed, from what I know, this is just an assumption, that
Mhm.
he was money motivated to some degree.
Okay.
Where John Sinclair, and at this time, the White Panther Party has not been established yet. It was called Trans Love Energies, that group we talked about in that
Yeah.
episode last week. They were more focused on the charging, the helping the band be the movement of their political ideologies. The owner of the Grand Ballroom was like wanting to get, obviously was more money motivated. And as we'll learn today, MC5, it's kind of hard to know
Yeah.
where they stood. And pretty much all of today is learning about MC5, learning about the own crimes that they quote unquote potentially committed. And
Mhm.
I guess the main question of this episode is, what is your interpretation of MC5 in
Okay.
general?
Mhm.
Because I was surprised the more I dug into all of this, I had an assumption about the band
Mhm.
and it was kind of disproven.
Oh.
So it was really interesting. The more I dug into it, the more I was like, wait, hold on. This isn't me. I don't,
Right.
So today's just going to be a gentle overview and a deeper dive into what some would argue is a cult like environment
Yeah. For sure. I
that
mean, the
trans love
tools are
energies
there. Yeah.
and MC5 engaged in. Um, yeah. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But I think that if there was a cover charge, if I were to look it up, I bet that it would say that there was a
Right.
cover charge.
Okay.
Yeah. Because of the Grand Ballroom being the person who ran it and what it felt like that they were up to. But
Mhm.
also, too, the Grand became the hub for the White Panther Party, and it was a kind of a hub for trans love energies before it became White Panther Party.
Mhm.
So they also did a lot of stuff out of the Grand that I'm sure didn't have a cover charge. Like
Okay.
more of like group things, maybe artists workshop stuff, and probably some political gatherings, I'm sure, of some kind. So when the guitars come on the floor, no, that's not what I meant to say. Actually, cut all of that. Okay. I don't even want to go to there. So the idea here is that this grand ballroom is filled full of lots of different types of people.
Mhm.
They were not passive music consumers. They were there for the experience that
Right.
they knew would happen, I would imagine, every weekend. If they're the house band, they're probably playing multiple times a month, if not every
Yeah.
weekend.
Yeah.
And at the point when the Grand first started, they were the only band that was playing the Grand.
Wow.
Yeah. So the band wraps itself in the American flag, screams profanities, calls on the crowd to start a revolution, especially at this time, as we talked about, is
I
how
was going to say this is like a
charged.
perfect sort of niche opportunity. Like you're going to offend a lot of people, but for the folks that are with you, they're like really with you.
They're really with you. And they're obviously deeply angry at the war that's going on, at police. A lot of people have generational issues with
Yeah.
the way that their parents handled everything at the time. And most importantly, the assassination of Martin Luther King
Sure.
just 4 months ago. And then Robert Kennedy, also about 4 months ago.
Yeah.
So by midnight, the show is over. The crowd spills out onto Plum Street and into the world. They argue about politics that they don't really half understand, which I can just hear it. You're just like
Yeah.
listening to people pass by, like, like kind of just trying to figure out how to move through the world.
Mhm.
They all share cigarettes and some of them get drafted. Some of them will end up at the 1968 Democratic Convention in Chicago 2 months from now on the wrong side of the police line. And some will draft away from all of this by 1970 cut their hair and get a job. And a few of them will follow the lead all the way to punk rock 7 years before punk rock even had a name.
Mm-hmm.
So this was punk rock before punk rock, basically. Okay. When John Sinclair first heard MC5 play, they were playing in more of like a community space. And
I'm just picturing like a senior center.
They were practicing, so they weren't even playing for like any old folks in a senior citizen's home. Right. But John Sinclair heard them and he's like, wait a second. And his deep interest in jazz, like we talked about last time, really perked his ears up. Mm-hmm. And he was like, so how did this all start? How did we get here to this huge display of rage in 1968? So a school teacher who was actually the person who opened up the Grand Ballroom as a rock venue, he had asked Sinclair if he knew of a good band with an original sound. And Sinclair was like, hey, actually, yes, I've been hearing the MC5 play, and they really do have this very electric, new, different take that I haven't heard anywhere else. Mm-hmm. So it like was deeply interesting to him. So Sinclair was the one who placed MC5 at the Grand from the very beginning. And it was very deliberate, and it was what is considered like a managed relationship. Mm-hmm. This is what like in retrospect, it was very, and this will come up a little bit later, as John Sinclair was described as kind of difficult to work with, which I was like, interesting, you know? So the Grand Ballroom at this time, after it was opened, became mixture of like high energy music and counterculture propaganda centered around Sinclair. So he obviously, like we said, he managed the band. And then he also led the group called, at that time, Trans Love Energies. So the venue, the Grand Ballroom, is so important because it was both the birthplace of MC5 being heard by the masses, and that's also where John Sinclair announced to everyone for the first time ever, after the first show that MC5 ever did, that the White Panther Party existed.
Oh, okay.
And so he said, like, he announces it, right? That it's like, we are the White Panther Party, and this is what we're doing here. Yeah. And we're an ally with the Black Panther. We're in an allyship with the Black Panther Party. So the Grand Ballroom emerged with this unofficial headquarters of the Grand as the White Panther Party headquarters, and also a wider counterculture scene. And it was where MC5 honed in all of these explosive live performances, and they drew crowds together who were eager for this revolutionary rhetoric and all of this tumultuous experience.
Yeah.
And so it was this crucible for radical ideas and artistic expression, and it symbolized the convergence of music, politics, and community all in one place.
Just a super safe place to know that everyone's sort of thinking the same thoughts that you are.
Yes. And you're with like-minded people. It doesn't matter what you look like, where you're from, what you're a part of. We all believe in similar things.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, John Sinclair announces the White Panther Party at the end Grand, and it kind of is treated like a political rally. This is really cool. You can find this on Spotify or YouTube. There is an MC5 song called Kick Out the Jams, and it in parentheses will say official like recording, or you can tell that it's like the main recording. They have this song recorded that night that John Sinclair announced the White Panther Party.
Wow.
I highly recommend putting it on your speaker and playing it very loudly while you're cleaning. It's very motivating. This live recording at the Grand captures the heart and essence of this growing radical movement that shook the American establishment. Mm-hmm. As we talked about in the White Panther Party episode, at this time, the FBI is already watching these folks. Because they now have this headquarters of the Grand, now there's like even more
Oh,
presence,
yeah,
right?
because first they were sort of like Andy Warholing it. They're like
Yes.
meeting,
They're
hanging
like,
out.
we're at this place, which we'll get a little
Yeah.
bit into. I actually did not realize that they were communally living. And for some reason in the book I'm reading, it never mentions that the White Panther Party or Trans Love Energies like lived together.
I don't
It
know.
just,
I think I
it
got
like
that
slipped
vibe
my
from how you
mind. Did you
presented it last time.
see?
Yeah.
This is the funniest thing is that I was like, oh, maybe they all just like came together. Like I never really, because I guess too, so many of them were college students. I was like, oh, they're living like in student housing and they're all coming together, like
Sure.
at this artist workshop space or whatever,
Yeah.
you know? And I guess I hadn't really thought about it and it wasn't really spelled out to me. So I was
Mhm.
like, it flew right over my head, but it does make the most sense.
Yeah.
They have this location, they have this specific space and time, the grand ballroom, where of course now it's like freaking bees to honey. There's a lot of police paying attention to everything they're doing.
Mhm.
And also the MC5, and at the time before they announced that they were the White Panther Party, we'll go back a little bit in time, when Trans Love Energies was becoming more established and more people as it moved from the artist workshop to Trans Love Energies,
Mhm.
they had two houses and there was about 26 of them who were split between these two houses, and MC5 lived in amongst those two homes.
Okay.
So they are living together, they're making music together. And as we'll get into, a lot of the band members of MC5 were kind of, it feels like half of them were like, they're like, yes, this is a political statement. The other half of them were like, I kind of just like to fucking rock out and like do my thing. And
I'm
I'm
just
just
having a good
here because
time.
it's here, you know?
And they weren't at this point, they're not like signed to a record label, right? They're just
Not yet.
making music. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
they do get signed to Elektra Records, and we'll get a little bit into that. But at this time, they're not signed yet.
Mhm. Okay.
So they move through space and time, and they're like just getting formulated. John Sinclair picks up what's going on. He's like, and we'll get into the timeline a little bit. But even when Trans Love Energy's MC5, everybody's at these two houses, the FBI is locked in. They're like trying to constantly infiltrate. They're trying to constantly do things to break up the party because we do not have free love, rock and roll, and sex in the streets here.
Yeah.
And we especially don't do drugs, and you all are a problem.
Mhm.
So I also looked more into I was telling Heather about COINTELPRO before in the White Panther Party episode. I actually looked more into them. They were technically an illegal surveillance group, which
What?
only lasted till 1972. And it was actually really interesting because yesterday I saw a post that our current administration is literally, they came out with like a statement, and I read the statement and I was like, wait, I literally just read the same exact thing happening in the late 60s by Intel Pro.
Yeah.
And I was like, my mind was blown because I'm like, wait, guys, this has happened before.
Yeah.
Wait, this has happened before.
That tends to happen.
Which is so crazy. Like, wait, hold on. We've been here. We've been here. Just read
Mm.
a history book. Just look into things. I was like having one of those like moments with the, you know, when in Always Sunny,
Yeah.
he's like got
The red
he's
string.
like the board and the string, and I was like, guys, this has happened before. It's like having one of those moments. I was like, oh my god. So basically, in short, that Sinclair built the Grand into MC5's home, and so then he could also use it as a platform to launch the White Panther Party.
Mm.
So it all became this interlocking machine, and the Kick Out the Jam song was the founding document. And since it
Okay.
was recorded on site, we have this incredible staple in time and history that you can literally listen to, and you could hear the energy through the music. And I just think it's like the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
So by August 1967, before the Grand had even opened up yet, and before they had officially became the house band, they formally asked Sinclair to be their manager. So it was a
Oh,
mutual
they asked
need.
him. Okay.
They asked him. So it was a mutual need from the start. Sinclair was looking to find a rock and roll band for an ideal medium to turn large numbers of young people onto the possibility of change that he saw was possible.
Did he have previous music
So,
management experience?
He didn't, but from what we talked about, remember I told you he was super into Black culture, Black jazz, and so he
Yeah,
spent
I
a
knew that he
lot
had
of
like a passion
time.
for it, but I didn't know
But
if
he
he'd
had
actually
never
done it.
managed. No, he had
Okay.
never managed
Manifest your dreams,
a music
everybody.
group. Yeah, you can become a music manager, I guess, if you really want to.
Yeah.
So Wayne Kramer, one of the band members, later said in reflection that he had a lot of passions, a lot of interest, referring to Sinclair. He was not always a saint or the easiest guy to get along with, and sometimes we hated him. But I would say he was a mentor and a friend.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, you'll love this. The band before Sinclair got involved, the before Sinclair and the after Sinclair effect differentiated the band. And Iggy Pop recalled that when I first saw them, it was before they met John Sinclair. They were just a really good big city cover band. They covered basically the Stones, Hendrix, The Who, and as they developed over time, they were an overlay of jazz, but a lot of music values were very hard rock. Okay. So Sinclair didn't give them the music, he gave it a frame, which was the political chargedness of their messages, which then in turn turns into punk rock later on, which is like so sick.
Yeah.
It's like, that's so freaking cool.
It's pretty neat.
Yeah. So, okay, the commune, right? Where does this feel like giving? It's like giving cult vibes. So, just like I had said, there was wound up being two houses. So we'll get a little bit into that. So, this is probably the most like underreported part of MC5, and what most people know about MC5 is that they didn't obviously just play political music. They were part of this like bigger collective commune that we've been referring to and was known as Translove Energies. Translove Energies moves to Ann Arbor in May of 1968. The commune consists of, I was wrong, 28 people, not 26. Okay. This was including 3 children and the MC5 band members. Jeez. So they were all, and this is so wild. So can you imagine being a kid growing up in this?
No.
Unfathomable. So all 28 people were occupying 2 old 18-room houses at 1510 and 1520 Hill Street on the edge of the University of Michigan campus. The band didn't have their own apartments. They literally lived in the collective, as we were talking about, in the household who was run and controlled by their public identity. But I can only refer to this as an enmeshment.
Yeah.
You're living, eating, working with and for the same person.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's a lot. So according to Lenny Sinclair, what could go wrong? What could possibly go wrong? So according to Lenny Sinclair, who's John Sinclair's wife, there was no hierarchy within the commune. Men and women contributed equally, and everyone shared childcare and kitchen duties, which was like, okay, slay. That sounds great. Nice. So other sources, however, depict the commune as being more traditional in gender roles. So Lenny Sinclair is like, it's all the same. Other people are like, I don't know, feels kind of gendered. So that contradiction alone is worth like noting. And the official story was like a radical equality. So the unofficial story is like seemingly a little bit more complicated. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure if you talked to different people, 28 people, you're definitely not going to get the same experience. You know what I mean?
And that's also, I think, anytime that you have a large group of people living together, 28 or not, and if it is sort of this shared goal and mentality, you're still a ton of humans coexisting, and
which is hard.
Yeah.
Can't.
Watch any Real Housewives franchise, you know? Doesn't matter how much people have in common. You sit down to dinner, you're going to have a fight.
You're going to have a fight. You have a share house. You all live in different houses.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. So according to Sinclair himself, the band grew dissatisfied with their money and with the lack of recognition and with living inside of the Translove Energies crowd.
Yeah, because they're not special like that. You know, it's like outside of the house, they're special. Inside of the house, they're one of 28.
Yeah, which I can only imagine felt some kind of way, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they began demanding that they be allowed to live like in a house of their own. And the band had to demand, italics, to live separately from their manager. And obviously that's not a typical band.
Yeah, it doesn't feel
relationship
good
with their manager. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of stuff that did surprise. I was like, oh, this stuff I'm actually pretty surprised. I was like surprised, not surprised, you know? Let's talk about the FBI surveillance. Their phones were illegally tapped, and they were subject to covert FBI surveillance constantly. During the riots, specifically, their group van was firebombed, and their residence was invaded by Marines checking out reports of a quote-unquote sniper who addressed Sinclair by name. It's like, wait, how do you know what my name is? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
The FBI launches an investigation into the White Panther Party, as we talked about in last episode, and hinging even the most minor infractions on hopefully landing Sinclair as their fall guy.
Okay.
So, the other founder of the White Panther Party, who we very briefly mentioned last time, his name is Pun Plamondon.
Yeah. Or sounds like a dinosaur type.
Yeah, it is. That definitely does feel like a dinosaur type. Yeah. So the FBI was like, okay, we could land Sinclair, we could land Plamondon, or literally any of the MC5 band members in prison, and we would consider that a win. Obviously, this is a lot of freaking pressure, right? Yeah. So again, to your point, what we talked about last time, just the distrust that elicits as you're engaging.
You're looking around like, are you undercover?
Can I trust you?
Yeah.
Yes. So one eyewitness recalls seeing FBI agents at MC5 shows in plain suits, busting kids for smoking pot, and then releasing them once they've given information on Sinclair and his lifestyle.
Plain suits is crazy work.
Not
you think
even
anybody
bothering.
Else is wearing a plain suit at these shows?
Yeah, they're not even bothering to go undercover.
They're like, this is my most casual suit. This is concert attire.
Yeah, they're like, they don't even care. So
Hello,
obviously, yeah, and they're like, no, well, they're not even bothering to go undercover. They want Sinclair to know that they're there.
Yeah,
they like want to have this. Yes, trying to. Obviously, this was a targeted public and intentional intimidation, and the government wanted the band and everyone around them to feel very watched, and that's because they were. Yeah. So let's talk about our guy Plamondon. What landed him? What is it called when you're omnivore? when you're isn't that both? Whenever we're like throwing it all the way back to 6th grade. Plamondon wasn't in MC5. However, he was a huge part of this culture in general, and he was one of the main people that was helping kind of keep everything intact. So he was the first person to be put on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list. So he was indicted for bombing. Ever? No.
Oh,
the first. Sorry.
Like what?
That would be crazy, though. No, actually, I don't know. You know what? This elicits a question. When did the FBI's 10 most wanted list start?
Didn't we talk about it on an episode?
Maybe we did. That's so funny. I love that you and I. Elevator music.
Anyway,
we'll figure it out. Anyway, so the CIA had a office bombing in 1968. Plamondon fled to Algeria.
Yes,
where he then went into hiding with a Black Panther exile named Eldridge Cleaver. He was indicted for the bombing, and that's why he fled the country. And then he came back in 1970, and he was immediately arrested. He was, again, a core member of this commune that MC5 was living in. What his main job was, he ran equipment trucks for all of their shows. And the band was directly implicated in the bombing with him because of their closeness, but they were organizationally intertwined with someone on the FBI's most wanted list. So obviously, it sparked a huge problem.
Yikes.
So Sinclair, Plamondon, and a third White Panther Party member were indicted by a federal grand jury for conspiracy to destroy a CIA office. So this lawsuit and its appeals went on for years. So and we briefly mentioned this last time, the CIA situation was happening alongside the local law enforcement trying to land Sinclair in prison for an extended amount of time to help disrupt and break up the White Panther Party. Mm-hmm. So the MC5's world obviously produced one of the most landmark civil liberties cases in American legal history, which we talked about last time, which is where the Supreme Court ruled that it was not okay for there to be illegal surveillance on civilians.
Right.
Which is pretty cool because that would have changed everything. So the rhetoric for this group, this community, the two homes, the band, who was kind of there, like with it, kind of half not. Their whole rhetoric was the sensation of like total assault. The White Panthers had a 10-point program which called for free food, clothing, housing, dope music, medical care, and everything free for everyone. And so the commune urged a total assault on culture as it is. And to your point last time, obviously when you disagree with something inherently, it says, I'm not okay with the way things are.
Yeah.
So it draws a lot of attention because like, what do you mean? Change everything. And it's not okay. Yeah. So this obviously this total assault on culture, increasing the distribution of underground press, propaganda, MC5 concerts, formed street theater action. This is crazy. There were like performed street theater actions in public and assisted high school students in publishing alternative newspapers. So the MC5, the White Panther Party, MC5, there's like this big web of political action, and also like getting younger students involved in publishing stuff in their own newspapers in high school that were like, hey, this is not okay what's happening in America.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it was like they were targeting like even like minors to like make politically charged statements. Which obviously puts targets on young people's backs.
Yeah, I don't love that. I mean, I like the idea of like, I'm a mentor, like this big brother, big sister sort of energy of like, let me teach you about politics. Let me teach you what I wish I had known when I was your age. I can understand that. But yeah, it's also that feeling of like, but now we're making children right in the forefront of a lot of tension and scary stuff that they shouldn't.
Yeah. Again, this is one of those things where as I like peel back the onion layers, I'm like, oh man, this feels like really hard to read, you know, because I'm like, okay, there's actually some stuff in here that I didn't expect, you know.
But this is the important part about taking the sensationalization out of things too, is to be able to say like, this is nuanced. And like you, for example, obviously are hyped up about this topic. And it's good, I think, to be able to say, as hyped up as I am about this, I have some qualms.
Yeah, I feel like I almost got lost in the sauce, you know, which is kind of my thing with everything is like,
but
I get
that's
that.
Why you won't be in a cult, because you get right there.
I'm like,
go, hold on.
Wait a second.
Hold on, that thing was weird.
That feels a little funky. Why do I feel that way? Yeah. Actually, I'm not going to sign over my check to you.
Yeah.
That's kind of wild.
Keep myself and my will as it is.
Yeah. It's reassuring that you think that I wouldn't join a cult. I love to hear that.
But I did say you would get close.
I also would definitely start one. So just because I would join one doesn't mean I would start one.
And that's different, and that's okay.
It would be so good.
We love an entrepreneur.
And you know what? Pop an LLC back behind there, and that you're already
pop an LSD and an LLC.
Speaking of drugs, let's talk about perfect segue, the band's own crimes. So outside of all of this political world, or maybe even within it, we have two main players within the band that we're going to briefly talk about their crimes. Also, we're going to talk, actually, let's talk about the band members first, and then you can kind of place them in time and place. That would be better. We have Wayne Kramer, Fred Sonic Smith, Rob Tyner, Michael Davis, and Dennis Thompson. Okay. So Wayne Kramer, he's the lead guitarist. He's the co-founder. He's the primary engine of the band. Fred Sonic Smith, rhythm guitar, the quieter, more mysterious half of a guitar duo. Smith earned his nickname honestly, and his music that he played was considered seismic. He later withdrew from public life, so he's like more of a quieter guy. So Rob Tyner, he did vocals. he has a really interesting story. He originally, like back before they even got connected to Translove Energies in the artist workshop, he even had a totally different name, but he was going to be their manager. And then once they were like, wait, no, you can sing, he then became the lead vocalist.
Wow.
And he changed his stage name to Tyner after the jazz pianist McCoy Tyner.
This is like making the band.
Yes, exactly. So Michael Davis was the rhythmic anchor. He was their bass player. Unfortunately, he battled a heroin addiction for decades.
Oh, no.
That we're going to talk about him a little bit. And Dennis Thompson, he was on drums. And he was the last surviving original member for very many years. And he just passed in a heart attack in May of 2024.
Okay.
Which him and Kramer actually died like a couple of months apart. And many of them died from like heart failure and very related to, I'm sure, their lifestyle, question mark. That would make sense to me. We don't know that for sure, obviously, but okay. So Wayne Kramer, he was convicted of cocaine trafficking and served time at Lexington Federal Prison from 1975 to 1977. And while he was there, he encountered Michael Davis, his own bassist, also locked up on drug charges. So the two members of the band were in the same federal prison at the same time, and that was part of kindred spirits. Yeah.
Fancy meeting you here.
Yes, exactly. And so, and again, this was 75 to 77. So, and we'll get a little bit of the timeline stuff and how everything kind of dissipated. But Michael Davis, he was the one who had that heroin addiction, and he cycled through many arrests and also many near-death experiences from his cocaine addiction, even for years after the band dissolved. He passed away of liver failure in 2012.
Oh,
so
that's tragic.
Yeah. Well, none of this, right? Like none of this, the band members, the house, it was ever like Manson style necessarily, like cult. But it definitely had like a lot of structural features. They have that the charismatic leader who led both the band and this commune. Their living situation, this communal residence that the band had to fight to leave, which is obviously noticeable, and then all this active government surveillance. And then the proximity to the federal crimes and all the fugitives is also kind of a huge issue. Yeah. So the use of the concerts as a recruitment event for the political organization also gives a little bit of like culty energy, you know? So obviously the White Panther Party was a hierarchical Marxist, Leninist, Maoist organization, and it was unable to entirely shed these like hippie roots. They were obviously viewed by law enforcement as like a less of a threat than the Black Panthers, you know, but there's still like this huge issue. But they're obviously still subject to some pretty serious like federal scrutiny. So that's a little bit of the lay of the land. I was so curious what MC5 stood for, what MC5 was, what does it mean? So it is nothing deeper than them choosing the name. Rob Tyner chose the name because it sounded like a car part. Yeah, girl.
Does it?
So also the other reason why it's MC5 is that it stands for Motor City 5, right? The band comes from Detroit.
Yeah.
They're framed for its car industry, obviously, and all these very simmering racial tensions. So it was part of the branding. It was very blunt, numerical, and also at the time, it sounded like it was a band from like somewhere else, like London or like San Francisco. They've got this like, there was another band that had a number in it that I was reading, and it's completely slipped me and I didn't put it in my notes, but it was like,
S Club 7.
S Club 7 came up. Wait, no.
S Club 7 was like early 2000s.
That's not right. No.
It's not right. But I like that you went with me on that journey, on the joke I was making.
That was
like, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
no, that's not right. It sounds a lot like S Club 7 though, because I'm like looking through. That's so funny. I was like reading a whole list of bands that were
the Jackson 5
names. The Jackson 5 definitely was on the list. I'm like trying to find it. There are a lot of bands that have been
numbers,
the name and then the number afterwards. I'm going to try and find it and put it in there because it literally sounds so much like MC5 that it's like, oh my gosh, wait, this is literally, because it's 2 letters.
Hammer.
It was like MC Hammer, and but that would actually, MC Hammer definitely would have made sense. So, oh my gosh, let's see. Hold on, give me a second. I lost my. Damn. Okay, I'm back. All right, there we go. So, who was MC5 before Trans Love Energies? Because they were there and they existed before this group, before they even got involved in all of this stuff.
They were the Beatles.
They actually, plot twist, everyone. This whole time we've been talking about the Beatles, and they all have different stage names. So like early 1960s, they're in a suburb, working class south of Detroit. And Kramer started the band in 1963 at Lincoln Park High School in his mother's basement.
Cute.
So that was super cute. They were I believe they were all in high school whenever they started, but obviously when they started, they had no intention of being some sort of like political catalyst. So they formed in 1963, and this is until like several years later that they're involved in like all of this like political stuff, right? So each of them had separately formed their own rock groups. So at the time, Smith's band was called the Vibratones and Kramer's was called the Bounty Hunters. And isn't that like 2 totally different vibes? I was like, what the heck? So as members of both groups left for college or they went to get jobs, Kramer was like, wait, no, like we need to combine. So they all get together and they get together with Rob Tyner.
Vibra Hunters.
The Vibra Hunters. Can you imagine? They definitely would give a much different political statement as the Vibra Hunters than
they're always sponsored by Adam and Eve.
It's actually really funny. Honestly, it would be pretty aligned with the message.
Yeah.
With the messaging.
For yourself.
For yourself. There's so many things I want to say. Okay. Anyways, Rob Tyner gets involved and he's like, hey, we're gonna be called the MC5. And wait, oh my god, wait. Dave Clark 5. There it is. Okay. It was Dave Clark 5.
Dave Clark 5. Okay.
Yes, there it is. I was like, okay, it's somewhere in here. I feel like I put it in here, but yes, it's the Dave Clark 5. So they gained inspiration from loving GTOs and being like, hey, Dave Clark 5 is being real popular right now, so we'll just smush it all together and we're MC5. So they all get together. They're like, hey, we're all going to be playing a bunch of fun music together, obviously. So they did not start out as this like innovative boy band, obviously. Not boy band. Oh my god, what did I just say?
But they are.
I mean, technically, they kind of were a boy band, I guess.
They just didn't have choreography.
They didn't have choreography, so I guess that differentiates them. But what I meant to say was like this group of like activists or like bad boy energy, like we're fuck the system.
That should have been their band name, Bad Boy Energy.
Bad Boy Energy, which would have been like Trans Love
Energy,
Bad Boy Energy. I almost said Bad Bunny. That's really funny.
Bad Bunny Energy.
Bad Bunny Energy. So they were, as Iggy Pop put it, very like pedestrian rock and roll situation. Think like sock hops, school dances, bar gigs, battle of the bands. That's the kind of stuff that they were doing, right? Okay. So the things that never changed were that they liked playing together. They obviously had a deep cohesion about them, but then they transformed over time as obviously Sinclair got involved. So the other thing that kind of surprises me is that at the same time that they asked John Sinclair to become their manager, they were getting their equipment repossessed for non-payment.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That was my moment.
Yeah.
Heather, how does that make you feel?
Well, I like their chutzpah. Okay. Because they're like losing their instruments, but they're like, hey, we still are a band worth managing. Mm-hmm. But also, they seem a little naive. Mm-hmm. But you know what? They have a dream and they're chasing it. So I'm curious to see where they go from here.
Well, they obviously, as we've been talking about throughout this entire episode, throughout the last episode, there's so much political strife and discourse around them. And really all they want to do is play music and like have a good time. Like they really just want to play music. So obviously it's impossible to understand MC5 without understanding what happened in Detroit in 1967. So from the jump, the vignette that I gave you, what did it mean by they were watching 67 from their windows? Well, the Detroit burns happened in 1967. So one of the deadliest race riots in American history broke out, and 43 people were killed and over 1,000 buildings were burned, and the National Guard was deployed. The mid-1960s were obviously a deeply tumultuous and turbulent time, and the music of MC5 stood as an oral reflection of events like this. And it really manifested as youth protesting against this type of violence. And the band was living inside of this in this like almost insular energy. And so obviously, as we talked about, Sinclair comes in, is their band manager. They, between 1967 and 1968, they appear on stage toting unloaded rifles. And at the climax of a performance, they have this like theater enactment of like an unseen sniper. Okay. And so the band members were at this time obviously still using LSD and weed, marijuana.
Are all the band members white, by the way?
No, some of them are people of color.
Okay.
I think the bassist was black.
Okay.
Question mark. I'll have to look. It also doesn't help that all the pictures I've seen are all black and white. Mm-hmm. So I'm like trying to be like, okay, I don't want to assume. But they obviously take like a very intense turn into being like much more politically charged. So
kind of scary, honestly.
Yeah.
Like on the heels of all of that, to not really to not know for sure what they're about to do with those rifles, and to not know that they're not loaded. That makes me feel tense in my body.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would imagine
I respect the performance art. I get that. You know what I mean? But I think
the crowd doesn't know that they're unloaded. Yeah. The crowd doesn't know that they're unloaded. But like also at that time too, when I read through this, I was like, oh, this is the turn that makes it feel like instead of trans love energies in the White Panther Party toting weapons, MC5 is toting the weapons, like the Black Panther Party, right? So it's almost like MC5 was this representational or metaphorical bridge between like the statements that the Black Panther Party made and like the White Panther Party, where it's like, okay, the White Panther Party, we're not going to be like toting guns around like the Black Panthers, but the MC5 will do that. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like this projection into the band kind of thing happening. Yeah. While we're here, one thing really important to note is I put, oh shoot, I didn't put it in this section. I put it in. Okay. So I had a little breakdown, which is in a separate document that I forgot to paste over here, is there were 3 band members. One of the band members specifically was like, hell yes, I'm politically motivated. This is what I'm here for. This is my life's blood. Another one was like, yes, I believe in this. Another one was like, yeah, sure. 2 of them were like, I'm kind of just here to make music. So it felt like kind of like a little bit of house divided energy.
Yeah, that would be really hard.
Yeah. So what winds up happening is that after the Detroit burns, the political statement, these very bold political statements and movements, they actually perform at the Festival of Life outside what I mentioned earlier is the Democratic National Convention. And every other band dropped out of this due to the political heat, but the MC5 shows up alone. Their appearance at the festival helped spark the 1968 Chicago riots, and bassist Michael Davis recounts, we were doing the show and everything was going okay when all of a sudden from over a hill came a huge line of policemen in riot gear charging towards the crowd. We packed up our gear and as fast as we could, we barely made it out before complete chaos ensues.
Oh my gosh.
So then in comes their recording at the Grand Ball.
Wow.
Yeah. Kick Out Jams is released. Then in mid-1969, the split between, and this is interesting because I've read 2 different accounts. I've read one account where the band breaks up or not breaks up, the band breaks off from Sinclair before he was imprisoned. And I read an account where they broke off silently before he was imprisoned, and then they broke off when he was in prison because he was in prison. Like, broke off because he, you know what I mean? Like, broke away from him because he's in prison, and he can't be their manager because he's in prison.
Well, and I mean, there's always like a little truth. And so maybe they were in the process of quietly splitting off, and then when he went to prison, they were like, cool, that saves us the trouble. It's probably somewhere in between there.
So this account that specifically is that it is suspected that the split happened quietly, and it happened before Sinclair's arrest. The commercial fallout, which we didn't even really talk about. Well, I guess really quick before there's a lot here, but in short, the album Kick Out the Jam's release sold over 100,000 copies and peaked at number 30 at the Billboard charts for 23 weeks. Yeah.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm. And this is kind of like what happened. This is great, right? My lights just went out.
That was strange.
Hello.
And was that before they got signed or after they got signed that they released that album?
Say that one more time.
Was that before or after they got signed when they released that album?
After.
Okay.
Yeah. This is after they get signed. The album quickly sells over 100,000 copies in January of 1969. This Kick Out the Jams was released, and it peaked at number 30 on the Billboard charts during a 23-week stay.
That's crazy. 23 weeks to stay there. That's amazing.
23 weeks is a long time.
Wow.
And at this time, they are signed with Elektra Records. The Hudson department store refuses to stock it due to its profanity. And MC5, in response, takes out a full-page ad saying, "Fuck Hudson's." And Elektra Records says goodbye. Drops them indefinitely and immediately.
Whoa, I didn't expect that.
Okay.
So
they're kind of fucked.
Petty. And then it also didn't work. Oh no.
Also didn't work, yeah. So then in comes the split. So mid-1969, split from Sinclair. He's arrested. So between the commercial fallout from Hudson's, Elektra Records dropping them, the FBI surveillance, and this growing weight on their shoulders of this house band of the revolution, it was pretty crushing, and so they all walked away. So as we know, Sinclair, from the last episode we talked about, he was imprisoned. He only served, I think it was like 2.5 to 3 years before a lot of people got involved and helped get him out of prison. Then in 1970, they get picked up by Atlantic Records.
Oh.
But it was produced by a man named John Lindau, and it was deliberately clean, radio-friendly, and critically divisive. So the radical base felt deeply betrayed.
Yeah, you sold out.
They sold out. And Sinclair later said that Landau tried to make them sound like an idea of what rock and roll was, which turned out to be kind of like Bruce Springsteen.
Was it all the original members?
Mm-hmm. From everything I've read, yes, my understanding that they stayed. I know. So 1971, High Time was their most musically ambitious album, which included horns, jazz structures, raw energy, and it was completely commercially ignored. And in 1972, heroin had entered the picture really seriously. Davis left due to addiction. The band collapses under the weight of drugs, debt, and exhaustion. This is so sad. MC5 reunites for a farewell show on New Year's Eve in 1973 at the Grand Ballroom.
Of course.
The venue that had only a few years ago hosted over thousands of eager fans desperate to see them, had only a few dozen people show up. Distraught, Kramer leaves the stage after a few songs, and the band dissolves not long after. And that is the story of MC5.
Well, first of all, well done.
Thank you.
The feeling that I'm having, and
yeah,
the
girl,
curiosity that's coming up, is it really makes you wonder. And I'm sure that there are probably more in-depth interviews and things like that floating around out there, but it makes you wonder if the sellout was them doing what Sinclair wanted to do, or if the sellout was them being more like pop radio friendly. Because if it seems hard to believe that if they were that passionate about the message and sort of being like the anarchists and really being more punk rock before punk rock had that label, right? Because punk rock is more of like a mindset, then it seems hard to believe that they would go, okay, sure, if you're going to sign us and you're going to manage us, we'll do this, at least without a whole lot of drama, right? And a whole lot of hissy fits and fighting and tooth pulling to get there. And so, you know, it's curious. It does make you wonder how much of that was actually sincere.
I mean, undeniably, that's why this story is so fascinating, is as I was getting into all of this, I was like, wait a second. Then that's what I meant by this is not what I thought it was.
Yeah, did they ever
I
actually
thought
care?
I was writing a story about this like politically monumental band that came out of the woodwork with this message and was like, we want to change, we want to reshape the youth of America and all the propaganda they've been fed. And then I look at everything and I was like, wait a second. So yes, it feels very curious,
inauthentic.
And and it doesn't go without saying that I don't want it to go unsaid that you can both be dedicated to being successful and also care about your community and political, like those two things can coexist.
1,000%. Yeah. And don't misunderstand. I'm definitely not saying that they never had any skin in the game at all.
Yeah, I think that they believe that. Right, certainly,
exactly. You have to care to a certain extent to actually like take up that mantle and be the face of that. I think it's just a matter of with what degree of commitment, you know, or if it was more like, listen, I support this movement. It's working for us really well right now. I'm in it. And then when it's no longer doing that, to be like, hey, listen, we gave it a good run. We did what we could do. I think we can move on. And that's fine. Everyone's allowed to change their mind or, you know, fight for things or stop fighting for things or whatever. But yeah, you're right. It does take on a very different turn of like, oh, were you guys the poster of this thing and this alliance and this movement? Or was it just like, this is a good time? The drugs are flowing. People are looking to us. We represent something. It's working really well in our favor. We'll ride the wave until the next one comes along.
And it works until it doesn't. And I feel like too, like from a group dynamics perspective, it's not sustainable to operate inauthentically.
No, that takes so much energy.
And so it may be the fact that half of them felt like it was authentic while they were at the Grand, and it may feel true that the other half of them felt authentic when they were picked up by Atlantic Records. So I know it feels like a house divided kind of feeling. I can only imagine. And what's really crazy is that, I mean, it's so sad. All of them have passed away. 2 of them died at the age of 46, but from heart attacks. Jeez. Another one died of like liver failure. Another one died of a heroin addiction. So it's like they really, I mean, it really is deeply like so wild that they all then went their own ways in that way. And then some of them like retreated from spotlight. Other people were more outspoken and like more involved in like other music careers and stuff. But anyways, I just found all of this. So this is where I started. I started with MC5 and the White Panthers. And so we went all the way back.
Yeah.
To
where did LSD even come from?
Yes, exactly. So
I enjoyed the journey.
Here we go. Yeah,
nice
me
job.
too. I sure did. I learned a lot. So
oh yeah, me too. And I think too, you know, I'm again sitting here with this curiosity and I think there's also a lot to be said for even if it was so authentic, it would be very hard and overwhelming and stressful if every time you played and were trying to do something you were passionate about, you were afraid of law enforcement, riots, violence,
being killed or imprisoned, or your friends
or your audience
getting
or whatever.
Yeah,
I mean, that would make anybody kind of go, look, at what compromise can be found? How do we keep playing music, which is something we care about, without being afraid every time we do it?
Yeah, and like obviously this is not working for us because this messaging is only getting us further and further in trouble, and we can't do what we want to do, which is to be successful.
Well, and we can't spread a message if no one can hear us because we're in jail cells or if we're dropped and then we can't play anywhere or dead. Yeah. So, you know, I think there's certainly plenty of places that it can go and may have gone. Wow.
There it is, MC5. You can listen to all of their music online. So highly recommend. I was cooking the other night, like listening to their whole discography, and I was like, wow, this is noticeably different. Like it's wild how much different it is. So anyways, there you go.
Well, great job, Chair. Thanks for teaching me all about LSD and these movements and the White Panther Party and all of it. Wow.
There we go.
Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
See ya.